The Phoenician city-states, spread across the Mediterranean coastline, were known for their maritime prowess and thriving trade networks. Yet, beneath this veneer of cultural sophistication lay a legal system that could be cruel and unforgiving. These ancient seafaring people employed punishments that were both brutal and symbolic, often reflecting the gravity of the crimes committed. 1. Sacrificial child offering, a dark religious duty. One of the most infamous aspects of Phoenician punishment was the controversial practice of child sacrifice, often connected to their worship of the god Baal. Historical records suggest that during times of crisis, such as war or famine, the city-states offered children, often from elite families, as sacrifices to appease their gods. The children would be placed on the arms of a statue of Baal and rolled into a burning fire beneath. While this act was framed as a religious duty, it was also seen as a way to punish the families involved, marking the ultimate sacrifice for the survival of the city-state. 2. Flaying alive, skin as a symbol of betrayal. One of the most horrifying punishments employed by the Phoenicians was flaying, where a person's skin was removed while they were still alive. This gruesome act was often carried out on individuals who were considered traitors or sacrilegious criminals. The victim was stripped and, in front of witnesses, their skin was carefully peeled off, layer by layer, until death followed from shock or blood loss. The skin, sometimes displayed on city walls or gates, became a morbid reminder of the consequences of defying the law. Flaying was not just a punishment, but a message to the entire population that betrayal would be met with the utmost cruelty. The pillar of shame, public display, and death by starvation. For crimes such as corruption, embezzlement, or betrayal of public trust, offenders were sometimes subjected to a unique form of punishment known as the pillar of shame. The condemned would be chained to a tall stone pillar in a prominent part of the city. Exposed to the elements and without food or water, the individual would be left to slowly starve or die of exposure while being constantly mocked and scorned by passers-by. The pillar acted as a symbol of both physical and social isolation, where the criminal's fall from grace could be observed by all. The slow, public nature of the punishment ensured that it had a lasting psychological impact on the community. 4. Breaking on the wheel, shattering both body and spirit. Another brutal punishment employed by the Phoenicians was breaking on the wheel, where the victim's limbs were systematically shattered. The criminal would be tied to a large wooden wheel, and executioners would use heavy objects to crush their bones, one by one. The broken body would then be left on the wheel to die from blood loss or exposure. This was a particularly cruel form of punishment, as it maximized pain while prolonging the victim's suffering. Those who witnessed such a spectacle were left in no doubt about the power of Phoenician law and the merciless nature of its punishments. 5. Drowning at sea, justice for maritime crimes. Given the Phoenicians' close connection to the sea, it is no surprise that some of their punishments were tied to the ocean. For crimes such as piracy, treason, or betrayal of the state, the punishment of drowning was particularly fitting. Criminals would be taken out to sea and thrown overboard, often bound or tied to weights to ensure they sank beneath the waves. Drowning not only provided a swift death, but also served as a symbolic punishment for those who had violated the maritime laws of the Phoenician city-states. 6th Exile, a fate worse than death. For those whose crimes were considered too severe for mercy, yet not quite deserving of death, exile was a common punishment in the Phoenician city-states. Banishment from one's homeland, family, and community was seen as a fate almost worse than death. The exiled person would lose their social identity and be left to wander the dangerous and foreign lands beyond the city-state's borders. In the tightly knit societies of the Phoenicians, where family and trade connections were crucial, exile stripped an individual of their entire support system, leaving them vulnerable and often leading to a slow and lonely demise. 7. Forced labor, a life of servitude. For less severe crimes, Phoenician rulers often sentenced offenders to a lifetime of forced labor. Criminals, especially those caught stealing or committing fraud, could be condemned to work in the city-state's quarries, mines, or ships. The physical toll of forced labor was immense, with many prisoners succumbing to exhaustion, injury, or disease long before completing their sentences. Make sure to subscribe for more interesting content. This punishment ensured that the criminal would be removed from society and placed in a situation where they would contribute to the city's economy, albeit at the cost of their freedom and well-being. 8. Public humiliation, the weight of shame. For minor crimes, the Phoenicians employed various forms of public humiliation as a means of punishment. Offenders would be paraded through the streets, sometimes in chains or stocks, while the community was encouraged to jeer, throw objects, and shame them. Public humiliation, though less physically painful than other punishments, had long-lasting psychological effects. In the close-knit city-states of the Phoenicians, where reputation and social standing were of utmost importance, being publicly shamed often led to social ostracization, making reintegration into society nearly impossible. The punishments employed by the Phoenician city-states were as diverse as the crimes they sought to control. From the public spectacle of crucifixion to the symbolic drowning at sea, these punishments were designed not only to exact justice, but also to instill fear. The Phoenicians, like many ancient civilizations, understood the power of punishment as a deterrent and used it to maintain the delicate balance of their society. The brutality of these punishments serves as a reminder of the harsh realities faced by those living in these ancient city-states, where survival often came at the cost of justice.